Welcome, everybody, to today's presentation on Stop the Nonprofit Blame Game. I'm Bill Russell, President of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce. I am really excited. We've been talking about this, Hardysmith and I. He stopped in here last year to talk about the new book that he had coming out. Hardy and I go back a long ways. Hardy was the National Vice President of the United States Junior Chamber of Commerce, which some people might know as JC, the largest young people's organization in the country. Hardy was an MVP in 1984-85. I was still a young pup. I was the president of my father's local JC chapter at the time, but we knew some of the same folks. And then later, Hardy got involved on the Board of Regents of the United States Chamber of Commerce, which runs an institute to teach people how to do their jobs as Chamber of Commerce executives. He's worked though within the NASCAR industry. He's from Alabama, so he knows a lot of the Allison guys that Davey and Bobby and all of those people came through that, but he's worked with a lot of the race teams in the NASCAR industry. He actually worked for NASCAR, but in the last few years, he's actually been going around and speaking to associations, whether it's associations, civic clubs, what have you, about running an effective organization, particularly nonprofits. And when he came in here last year, right around Christmas time, and he had the book, Stop the Nonprofit Blame Game, all of us who have worked on nonprofit boards, whether civic club, Crime Stoppers, volunteer groups, historical associations, we always kind of maybe think there's one person on that board keeping us from getting to our goal. And I got the book over Christmas and I read it in a couple of days, and I'm going like, I know this individual, I know this one, I know this one. And yes, I've lived this experience. So again, I am so excited to bring Hardysmith up here and talk a little bit about your associations and how you can be more effective leaders. Hardy?
What would the possibilities be for your nonprofit if you could benefit from a positive, productive, and fully engaged board? Unfortunately, that's not the case for far too many nonprofits, associations, and yes, even chambers of commerce, Bill. The frustration is real. There is a constant sharing of angst and anxiety around board member engagement. Sadly, there's either not enough or in some cases too much, right? But what's the reason for all this? What's the cause? Why does this exist? Well, I set out on a quest to find the answer to why don't board members do what they're supposed to do. And then that's led to a significant, big time reveal. What my work across the country, interviewing, visiting with board members, has educated me on, that very good board members have shared with me that quite often they get turned off. They get turned off by their board experience. The board experience itself is not a positive situation. Board members have also identified that there are other significant contributors to their experience being less than positive. And here's some of those significant influencers. Number one, they get turned off because the board that they've committed to serve, Bill, doesn't have the right people. They've got the wrong people. Another influencer is poor communications. And I'm gonna go a little deeper into poor communications and exactly what that is. And then this was a big one. Good board members get turned off because of repeated board member relationship mistakes that those of us in the nonprofit sector just insist on continuing to make. You know, we've all heard that old saying about, you know, continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result. Well, that's the world of nonprofits. We keep insisting on recruiting board members with the same process. We keep insisting on communicating with our board members the same way. We insist on running our meetings the same way. We insist on creating a board experience that's the same way. And how's it working out? It's not. And the reason I say it's not is that's the source of all the frustration. So I set out to find the answers, and I'm gonna share some of these key answers today. And the big reveal is that while nonprofit professionals, the staff members, on one hand, are complaining about their board members, on the other hand, their board members are complaining about professional staff. And it's their fault that the organization isn't what it should be. So when you, okay, I've lost the clicker, so I'm going to need that help. So now with those two fingers of blame, that's the blame game. Make sense? So what are the consequences if this dysfunctionality of a nonprofit board blame game exists? Who wins in the game? Who wins in this game? Who loses in this game? Everyone loses. So does it make sense to keep doing the same things the same way and thinking you're going to get a different result? Does that make any sense whatsoever? Okay. So to have the board that your organization needs, and I would suggest deserves, I mean, I've had a chance to visit. I've heard some really compelling missions here, and congratulations to everyone on what you're getting done in your community. Every single organization that's represented here today is doing wonderful work. So don't you deserve the board that's going to help you continue your work, maintain your work, sustain your work, and even maybe take your work to newer, greater heights? Don't you deserve that? Well, let's figure out how to get you one of those boards. I'm going to share 3 transformative actions from my Amazon best-selling book, Stop the Nonprofit Board Blame Game. And action number 1 is recruit board members with purpose and process. Be sure to write this down. If you are having engagement issues with your board members, it's highly likely you do not have a productive, results-oriented recruitment process for new board members. And I'm gonna, because I know Dawn does fundraising. How many of you ask your board members to be actively involved in fundraising? I mean, and my caveat here, my context is I'm talking about actively solicit. I'm not talking about, okay, buy a table to the gala, sponsor a golf tournament, hole, you know, everybody does that. I'm talking about me asking Bill for money, asking Bill for a check. So we've got a lot of people involved. Let me break this news to you. You may have been late on getting this news bulletin. Not everybody in this world is excited about asking someone else for money. Matter of fact, most people do not want to ask anyone else for money. All right? You need to understand this. So think about, just close your eyes just a moment. I promise you'll be in a safe place. Close your eyes just a moment. Think about your last board meeting. Think about the faces around that board table. See the faces? So how many of you have a dozen or more board members? Got more than a dozen. Okay, a few. How many have or less than a dozen? Okay, that's most everything. All right. So open your eyes. I'm just gonna tell you. I'm not gonna suggest it. I'm not gonna recommend it. I'm just gonna, like my wife does me, I'm not wasting time. I'm just gonna tell you the way it is. All right. You think about those 12 or so, maybe more board members. There's not very many of them that are going to ask someone else for money. Now, how many hands went up when you're expecting your board members to raise money? Most everybody in the room. Write this one down. If you're expecting board members to be fundraisers and they're not doing it, then you have the wrong people. This is tweetable. If you want fundraisers, get fundraisers. All right. And I'm going to help you understand that a little bit better when we're talking about recruiting. So, working for Bill France Jr. in NASCAR, the best piece of advice I ever got from him was, Hardy, anticipate. Solve your problems in advance. So let me take that lesson from NASCAR world, apply it to nonprofit world, and maybe a little bit of HR lesson in here. HR says, don't hire a problem, right? Hardy from NASCAR world is saying, don't hire a problem from a board member standpoint. So how do you avoid that? Number one, think about this. And this is all outlined in the book. The book goes way deeper for you. Number one, the what. Most importantly, the what. And every organization is different. What is it you want your board members to do? What is it you want them to do? And maybe think about your strategic plan, or you've got a big capital campaign coming up and big, heavy fundraising is involved. You might have a merger coming up. You may have a big transformative data transformation in systems and IT, like significant stuff. I mean, these are all major issues that we're all facing all the time. Succession planning could be on the radar screen. Major issue in the nonprofit sector, right? All right, so what is it that you need in the way of experience, skills, talents, and willingness, as in the amount of time that it takes? So if you have one board meeting a year and they show up and it's kind of a ministerial type situation, okay, that's fine. But if you're kind of intensive and you meet once a month, all right, what about for the organizations where the board members are expected really to provide your people power? Man, used to say manpower, but I'm not sure I can say it anymore. So people power. So, but it's hands-on. It's hands-on. It's a workforce, a key volunteers. And that's fine. Everybody's different. So whatever it is. So what are you expecting? Well, if I'm expected to show up, and I heard today at Rotary, I guess once a month, the Rotary Club is committed to work for Habitat for Humanity. Incredible. But so right now, we know we're looking for those volunteers and we're wanting our board members to participate on that. So that's one Saturday a month. So when you're outlining the what is your ask? What are you asking your board members to do? Now, you got the what over here. All right. On the other side, so that's down one side of the paper is the what. The other side of the paper, draw a line, is the who. I'm going to tell you, and I'm not going to apologize for it because I've heard so much about South Carolina Gamecocks this, South Carolina Gamecocks that. I don't think there's been any conversation about anything else about other than South Carolina. So I'm kind of South Carolina. Okay, I got it. I got it. Somebody here is interested. Hashtag Gamecocks. I got it. I'm not anybody. I like sports. I'm a sports guy. And, you know, it's the season. I'm all into the 64. Now we're down to the 16 and the tournaments. I am all in it. But you know what's better than the seasons is recruitment season. I like recruitment season. So think about this. For about 12 years, with a local university in Daytona Beach, Embry-Riddle University, I helped form and coach the Junior Eagle basketball program. At the time, don't be getting all the NCAA on me. At the time, Embry-Riddle was NAI. There's no rules in NAI. So now they're NCAA, you can't do this stuff. But so we had a group of kids, and it was just great. And once or twice a year, we'd have a travel trip just to say we could travel somewhere. So we'd go over to Disney. Wide world of sports. It's pretty cool to have Junior Eagles in the wide world of sports and at Disney. But we were just kids. I mean, just kids. I mean, I was a dad that thought that when the rec league said, well, Hardy, you know, you are complaining all the time about the officials, about the court, you're just complaining. If you think you can do better, why don't you just do it yourself? So I did. I just started my own program. And we just got good kids. So we would go to these once or twice a year, go to these tournaments. And Bill, no exaggeration. Now, we got our PB and J's, the team moms had all made. We'd pack them up, and we're just out traveling. They had to bring their school books and do homework. I had one of the moms was a teacher. We actually had study hall, which was coach's nap time, really. So that worked out. So the point is, our group of kids and moms and dads, we would go to these games, and all of a sudden I'd see a group of kids over here on the side, and there's the coach, and the coach would be saying, all right, we're playing today. We're in Orlando. Next week we're in Philadelphia. So here's your plane ticket for Philadelphia. And oh, by the way, our kids were all from the neighborhood. So it's like Huntersville, Davidson, Cornelius, Kannapolis. We're all neighborhood kids. These kids were from Philly, from DC, from Miami, from New York, from LA, and they were shoe deals. These are 6th, 7th, and 8th grade old kids. Hardy, Bill's infected your thinking. You've gotten off on this sports tangent. And then what the heck does this have to do with nonprofits? You know what else we saw? We saw Division I upper tier programs, coaches like the coaches would, the Caliparis, the Coach K's, they would be at these games watching some kid in the 6th grade. And you know who else was there? Scouts from the NBA teams. They were projecting, they took recruiting so seriously. They were projecting a kid in the 6th grade, all right, by the time he's 17 or 18, when he gets to be a senior in high school, we can tell where he's going to be. We can tell how good he's going to be, physically gifted, athletically gifted. Let's bring it back to nonprofits. How important is your mission? Just think about it. How important is your mission? What difference do you make? If you had walking back to the first question, if you had the benefit of a productive, positive, fully engaged board, couldn't that really help amplify your mission? Certainly. Well, are you thinking ahead for your future blue chip 5-star players? blue chip, 5-star board members. So right now, here's what happens without fail. The annual meeting is in December. Well, actually it's in January. And December really, a lot of holidays happen in December, family time off, dinner, family time. Can't really get anything done in December. So the board meeting in November is really the last stop point for getting your nominees in to be elected at the January meeting. But what happens if you stop and think about it? November is really kind of busy too. So there's Thanksgiving. And then, we're kind of walking backwards here. Then you got October. Well, October's Halloween. And you're really, the World Series starts happening. And even the baseball people have something to think about in October. And then all of a sudden, it's college football time. And, Gamecocks might be doing something that you want to keep up with. So all of a sudden, September, that's college football time. August is when you're getting ready to go back to school and we can't get anything done in August. So July and June, that's summer and that's a lot of vacation. People are away. And then of course, May, that's high school graduation time. You can't do anything in May. So now all of a sudden it's April and let's see, just depending on the year, could be Easter, but it's still spring. And we got a lot of stuff going on with spring, homecomings and everything. And then, families and all that. And then, it just keeps going. And now all of a sudden we're in January going backwards and we're starting our new year. And so now reversing that, we had an entire year to get ready to fill our board vacancies. And we found every reason in the world to not think about it until now. I'm taking you back to November, the last meeting before the annual meeting. And we're sitting around saying, well, gosh, Dawn, do you know anybody that could be on the board? Because, we're going to lose a couple of people. And gosh, I don't know anybody. Maybe Sally, do you know anybody? Yeah. I met somebody the other day and they might be pretty good. And then all of a sudden, John says, you know what? There was a guy who worked on the last volunteer day. And he probably, I don't know his name. But he was there. He worked really hard. He'd probably be a good board member. Yeah, that's good. So now we got at least one prospect we can work on. Are you taking what you can get? Is your board member recruitment process a whatever process? You get good people, but are they going to be productive? Are they going to be engaged? Will they meet the what that you need to have met? I call those folks slot fillers because they are not going to get the job done. You have not recruited with any intentionality. So here's something next that I want you to think about. Hit that next one. When you're recruiting, consider everything that you're asking your board candidate to do. Have the conversation with them about what the ask is, and it's different for every organization. All too often, we don't have the conversation, especially around fundraising. Why is that? Why don't we have the conversation about, we just say, it would be great if you could be on our board. Heard a lot of good things about you. How about it? Would you be on our board? And your ego says, well, sure. And you don't stop to think about what questions should you be asking. And then on my part, I'm not going to volunteer anything you need to know. Why would that situation happen? Why? All right, so we're high five. We're going to high five, pass it all the way back around because I can't jump the table. That wouldn't be good. So high five, really, I'm serious. High five. All right, so what is your name? Deborah, I should remember that, wife, Debbie. So Deborah, all of a sudden, now she's got a board member, and she's exactly right. If we tell them what's expected, they might say no. And now I'm back to that vacancy that I haven't filled. But Deborah's she's sneaky. She's been around this for a while. So she's got a plan. And her plan is, if I can just get Dawn to say yes now, what I'll do is after a board meeting or two, I'll talk to her about the fundraising. I'll talk to her about all the volunteer hours. I'll talk to her about, well, we're in a big transition and we're actually having board meetings every week and they last 5 hours at a time. I'll talk to her about that. Then. So think about this. Does it sound familiar? You're interested in, you're kind of thinking it's about time, maybe you settle down a little bit. And you thinking, okay, maybe I need to start getting a little bit serious about having a relationship. And you kind of look over the prospects and you're not really enamored with any of the choices you got. So really you think, okay, not really the best I think I could ever do, but you know what? I'm running out of time. I need to go ahead and pick one. And got a lot of shortcomings, but what I'll do is I can fix them later. So how does it work out? Now, ladies always understand where I'm going here. How does it work out in a relationship with the I'll fix them laters? That's exactly right. It doesn't, guys. You see this? It doesn't. Here's another thing. You know, if I just get them to the altar and just get them to say, I do. All right, then I'll fill them in about that fundraising that we got to do. Well, in marketing, if I'm selling cars, refrigerators, or real estate, that's called bait and switch. And it's illegal. And you can go to jail for that. So think about these things. You're probably not going to go, if that's your recruiting practice, you're not going to go to jail for it, but you will be about guaranteed to be so frustrated with the results that you get. All this frustration that the book talks about, it's not about bad people. It's about bad processes. And if you think legitimately someone would be okay with, we could train them up later, I'm an advocate of let somebody else train them up. And then after they get trained, maybe they go to the portal and then you bring them on in, right? All right. So in the ask process, notice the Venn diagram. After you explain what your ask is, then stop talking. Stop talking and listen. What are you listening for? What are you listening for? What are they willing to do? What are they interested in? And here's another one. Here's another nugget for you. If there's any hesitation, if there's any pushback, well, you know what, I'm having a rough time at home right now. There's some illness we're dealing with in the family. Well, really, you know, I'm getting ready to start back to school, or really, money's a little bit tight. I'm starting a second job. I mean, you can give them a whole bunch of legitimate, verifiable reasons for them telling you no. But you know what? Deborah, being sneaky, is still saying, you know, I got to fill that slot. I got to fill that slot. And so what happens, I'm not saying Deborah would ever do this, but what happens is we're going to push a no into a yes. Now, and then they come on the board. Actually, that's as far as they're never at meetings. They told you they don't have time to come to meetings. They don't have time to get involved in volunteer work. They don't have time. They're not going to be able to write a personal check because they told you they're having to work a second job because of a financial situation. They've given you every reason, legitimate reason, why they are not, and listen to this, why they are not a good choice for your board at this time. At this time. So acknowledge what they're telling you, listen to what they're telling you, and thank them for their interest. Let them know that, would it be okay if you come back maybe in the future? And now, instead of pushing someone a no into a yes, that's going to be so a frustrating experience for them and you and the rest of the board, you have now probably saved a very good future board member who can come back at a later date. Does this make sense? Okay. All right. Here's another important thing. We're all local. We're all local. How many of the organizations that we have here today, and by the way, Zoom folks, I'm glad you're there, and Bill can see the chat. Right? So Bill, do you know how to do that?
I do.
Just
Once
checking.
we get off to share the slide.
Okay. All right. So if you've got chat questions, we'll be sure to take care of those, but Zoom people, so glad you're here. We're all local. So the group that's with us today, this is like rhetorical because I don't want you to get in trouble. Is it possible that there are going to be multiple sharings of like board members? Is it possible? Yeah, I'm seeing the heads. Yep. Well, think about this. Yes. The same one person, awesome board member, because everybody wants Bill right on their board, and he's a member of 5 of the groups that are here today. Make sense? Because everybody wants Bill. Well, I'm not going to pass no shade on Bill. I'm not going to pass judgment on Bill. But the point is, here's a mathematical question for you. Realistically, it's like, how many number 1 priorities for nonprofit board service can this one individual have? Any clues? 1. Let's just say the last 3. What is your name? Sharice and Valerie, and so Sharice, Valerie, and Sarah. Bill's on all 3 of your boards. Who's number 1? Okay. Well, you hope. I mean, that's what you want. So think about this. When you're recruiting with purpose and process, work a little harder. Work a little harder. Who is it that's not on the radar screen? So, I'm not a believer in that old saying of, well, if you want something done, get a busy person. Well, I don't believe in that, because there's only so much somebody can do. So work a little harder. Who is on the radar screen that's not involved? And instead of the go-to here, President, CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, he's a great guy. Love to have him on my board. But instead of going to him and asking him, hey, would you serve on the board? Hey, we've got a board vacancy coming up. Would you please help us think of who would be an ideal candidate for our, so use his brain and his experience to help identify board members, because he's going to know them. He's going to know them. And oh, by the way, hashtag Junior Chamber Organization of the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, right?
The Lake Norman Young Professionals.
Young professionals. Yeah, duh. I mean, I see it on Facebook all the time. There's a lot of young professionals involved. I'm just going to say it might be some good recruiting there. And they're in a point, young professionals, they're not on anybody's radar screen yet. But you know something? They want to be. They want to be. They've got ideas. So jump in there and grab them before anybody else does. All right. Let me repeat this. If you want fundraisers, get fundraisers. Okay? Get fundraisers. And not all fundraisers are going to be good governance board members. Governance is the number one responsibility of a nonprofit board member. Governance, not fundraising, but that's a whole nother topic for another time. Action item number 2, create a positive board experience. Communicating effectively is so important. Now, I'm really glad to share. My wife and I have been married for 49 years together. And so in 49 years, I can be a little slow. But one of the things I've learned is the importance of communication in a relationship. So when it comes to nonprofit boards, it's not about, okay, Hardy just said, communicate effectively. That doesn't, I did not say it means more. It means better. So it's not just another email, another report. That's not it. We did the exercise a little bit ago. Let's just repeat it. Close your eyes again, if you would, just please for a few seconds. Visualize your last board meeting. Think about the faces around the room. All right, so while your eyes are still closed, see those faces? Every single one of those individuals has a different communication preference style. Okay, come back. All right, thank you. What does that mean by that? They have different preferences for how they want to receive information, how it's to be processed. So is it the big thick report that you spent hours on preparing, knowing they're not going to read it? And oh, by the way, the big thick report that shows up at their place at the board table about 10 minutes before they walk into the room, so they didn't get it in advance. Some people might like the big thick report. Some people might like just a simple email that summarizes what the report says. If it's a very significant issue, I'm going to suggest advanced communication is important. So a phone call, a text, an email. You may have board members who have a particular concern about a particular issue. And oh, by the way, they're the ones that are just going to be a pain in the you know what. And they're the ones that are causing you to lose sleep 2 nights before the board meeting, because you know that guy's just going to be giving you the dickens. How about this? Instead of losing sleep over him being so upset, maybe take time to get to know him a little bit. Maybe get the time to understand why he has a concern about this particular issue. And maybe take time, not in the board meeting, maybe take time to listen to him and see what his questions and concerns are and see if you can work those out. He may still have his questions, challenging questions in the board meeting. I got news for you. That's his job. He should be asking tough questions. All board members should be. But if you think about ahead of time, work it, anticipate, solve your problems in advance. Something else about effective communication. Board members do not want surprises. They shouldn't be seeing something about a major layoff in your nonprofit. The fundraiser was a bust. You had a police raid at the fundraiser because you had beer in a cooler in your boardroom. They don't want to see that on Facebook. They don't want to see that. So if that happened, be calling your board members. Make sense? Communicate effectively. Anytime I'm doing a program on effective communications, I'll always ask, ladies in the room, please help the guys understand what is the number one most important element to successful communications, personal communications. Without fail, 100% of the time, it's communication. What's the most important part of effective communication? Listening. Got that? Listening. All right. So it's not just about more. It's about understanding who you're communicating with. Share the last action item with you. So important in the world of nonprofits. Be intentional about board leadership, development, and selection. I like research. I like numbers. I like to see kind of what makes things happen. Maybe it's too much NASCAR background that I've got. There's amazing research that's been done by Board Source and others that says that there is a significant number of individuals who are being promoted to elevated to serving as the chair of their board, and they have no prior experience. They do not have the skill set necessary. They feel inadequate about serving as a board chair for their local nonprofit. Now, let me go a little bit deeper on this. Well, Hardy, our board chair, our board chair elect, they're like, they run the biggest business in town. CEO, they got 1,000 employees. I'm just telling you, just because you're all that in the corporate world, does that always translate into the world of nonprofits? Because I know when I worked for Bill France at NASCAR, you know, if he asked for your opinion, that was good, but he sure didn't need to. And it was, Hardy, if you feel like it, could you do this? Would you do this? It was, Hardy, I expect you to get this done, and you're about late getting it done already. So it was a telling, not an asking. When you're working with volunteers, it's asking, not telling, right? So what experience do they need? And I'm going to give you one more. Just because they've been on every nonprofit and every community organization in your community, and they've been the chair of everything, that doesn't mean they were good at it. Every coach I ever had growing up in any sport I ever had was, Hardy, when you're out there on the court and you're shooting baskets, are you practicing to get better, or are you practicing and just reinforcing bad habits? So they might have been multiple chairs or multiple organizations, but were they reinforcing good habits or practicing bad habits? So don't assume. So there's a big gap. So prepare your next chair for success. Be intentional about board leadership. What conferences do they need to go to? What other training sessions do they need to go to? So they're prepared. Is your next chair in the role of chair elect? So they like know they're going to be the next chair. And is the current chair and the next chair working together? So next chair up is going to be trained and ready to go. Is that happening? Okay. If it's not, this is where nonprofit leaders can make a huge difference. Not long ago, without any advance notice, let's hit the last one. Without any advance notice, I had a heart attack. My situation, the diagnosis for my situation, Sally, was 99% left artery blockage. There's a name for that. You know what it is? The Widowmaker. Spoiler alert, I made it. But the situation, and I asked the cardiologist, I mean, there was no symptoms. I mean, I know I could lose weight. I know I should be, I'm not running like I used to run in college. I know that. But where did it come from? So, Hardy, in your case, the obstacle that cut off the life-giving blood flow and oxygen for your body kept that machine going. It literally has taken a lifetime to build up. That helped me understand the relationship to nonprofit boards, board members, and the organizations they serve. So what are the obstacles that are keeping your nonprofit board from functioning at 100%? Before my heart attack, I didn't know I wasn't at 100%. I just thought the way I was the way it was supposed to be. And in my case, that literally went for decades. Now, what about your nonprofit? Again, what are the obstacles that with a little work, with a little intentionality, a little purpose, that you can remove the obstacles so you have a positive, productive, fully engaged board? We've got just a few minutes left, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. If there's something that we didn't cover, and I'll be glad to sell you a book and sign it for you and give you a complimentary bookmark today. I thank you very much. What else may I ask for you?
Questions?
Answer. Yes.
My question is, when your nonprofit came out of a community, and your goal is to try to get board members out of the community onto the board, but just listening to the different things, how, and when you're in that situation, you're gonna be, to have the residents on your board, that some of them have no training,
Right.
don't know it. How do you migrate that into, how does that look? How do you go about doing that?
Great question. So high five.
Especially when you're responsible for the community or.
And rephrase it for those because
Yes.
might not have picked it up.
So the question was, and what was your name again?
Lisa.
Lisa. So make sure I'm communicating effectively here, right? The question was recruiting. You need board members going into the community, and you're looking at individuals to serve on the board, and they good people, but really don't have an idea what it takes. Is that it?
Yes. Yes.
Here's your answer. Do you use volunteers? Okay. Do you have committees?
Not
Okay.
yet.
In your volunteer structure, do you have a plan for the use of your volunteers? A formal plan?
Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious, she's like really hitting it. All right, so you're way ahead, and the answer is right here for you, Lisa. The answer is in your volunteers. So rather than looking at the community as a whole and trying to find people, look micro and think about your volunteers. So why? Your volunteers are being exposed to the nonprofit. They understand the mission. There's a connection there. They're getting training, right? So think about working with your volunteers and providing them training. How many volunteers do you use maybe in a year? 100? Okay. Probably out of 100 volunteers, there are going to be some leadership roles, right? All right. I would suggest providing some of those leaders with a little bit of training to help them work with their fellow volunteers. So you might have team captains or something, something like that. And then from the leadership group of your volunteers, start thinking about potential board members. You might even invite them to a board meeting just to come in and see what it's all about and listen to the conversation. And if they start graduating from volunteer leader to the board, not everybody will, but then start thinking about, okay, in the existing volunteers, who can we advance to a leadership position? Now you have a farm club and you're growing your own. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. A lot of times this is a whole lot easier than it might sound.
Artie, Jill Lowe asked, shouldn't you recruit individuals who are familiar with the organization versus someone that's never heard of it? Wouldn't that make them more engaged?
Great question. So virtually high five. So you got to high five the screen there. Thank you, Jill. So that, let me say, that helps. That helps to have knowledge. But knowledge of the organization, I would submit, don't let that be the sole qualifier. So in your matrix of what it is, the qualifying what you're looking for, put familiarity with the organization down. They could be a donor. They could have attended a number of events. They could be, like Lisa's case, a volunteer, right? So yes, having knowledge puts them a step ahead, but I would suggest not solely dependent on knowledge. Okay, thank you. Anything else from Zoom world?
She thanked you.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
To piggyback on what Lisa's saying, I think what is striking me is the longing for many organizations now to have underrepresented voices represented on boards. So someone on the neurodiversity spectrum is going to bring value to a board.
Yes.
A young Latinx woman is going to bring value to a
Yes.
board. So there's value in the variety of perspectives that are going to allow for new views on processes. So if you
Yes.
say, oh, we've been doing the same thing over and over again, those systems are the same over and over and over again because the same kinds of people are showing up on boards, that it's very homogeneous.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same factory of board members. So
Yes.
if you're going to break that mold and invite different voices to the table so that you're not in the washing machine of the blame game, what are the ways? Because the onboarding of those different voices is going to take more time and energy and interest and persuasion and education and a whole variety of things. But the payout is going to be exceptional
Absolutely.
when you have that on your board.
One of the major questions that the nonprofit sector is dealing with today is how exactly do we do that? So it's not let me see if I can get this to be as concise as possible. I'm just going to tell you, read the book, because I outline it step by step on how to do it. But let me summarize it for you. There is some amazing research that's out there. Stanford Institute for Social Innovation, Board Source, a number of groups have collaborated across the nonprofit sector. It's a very, very high percentage of, and listen to me carefully here. And if you're not understanding, if there's a question, please let me know, because this is easy to kind of get off track on. There's an amazing high percentage of nonprofit organizations who have checked the box and said, yes, we believe in diversity. And talking about especially boards, we believe in diversity as a goal statement for our nonprofits board. I said high percentage have checked that box of yes. So if you read that and there's a period at the end of that and you stop reading, you're thinking, wow, we've come a long way. That's really impressive, right? Now you want to make you feel bad? In the same survey, the same data, very, very few of those so many organizations that have said, yes, we embrace the concept of diversity. We want diversity. We value diversity. We understand the why and the benefits. We got all of that. Very, very few have taken any action, any with a capital A, any action toward their goal. Letting it sit there for a minute. Now, I could say period, walk out of the room, and really, people really upset about the sorry state of nonprofits in the way of achieving diversity. But I'm not going to do that. Here's the why. Here's the why. It's not because the boards have given lip service to something that they think is politically correct, if you will. That's not it. And they haven't because they're talking out of both cheeks. They don't know how. They don't know how to recruit to achieve diversity. And the list of diverse, underserved, non-represented populations, I mean, that's a long, long list. So what I'm going to share with you applies to any group that you're trying to get involved in your organization. Typically, and this is great for community groups, typically what happens, just like in recruiting board members, we have the go-to people, all right? So in a community, when the organization, am I getting close to home? Because this is like Sunday, wait, the preacher's talking about me. This is, no, talking about those other people, right? All right, so here's what happens in reality is we got the go-to people. All right, I'm gonna use myself as an example. So I'm from Daytona Beach, Florida. Daytona Beach is home of the great Bethune-Cookman University. And I've had a lot of fantastic work assignments because of my work with NASCAR to do some significant projects on behalf of Bethune-Cookman University. Great friend of mine was he's passed away, but Dr. Oswald Bronson. Well, whenever the Chamber of Commerce said, you know what, this diversity thing, we need somebody. Whenever the big civic club in town says, really, we need to kind of get on with the times and we need to recruit somebody. Whenever the bank said, you know what, we really need to be more diverse on our bank board. See where I'm going here? Who do they call? President Dr. Bronson of Bethune-Cookman. Now, Dr. Bronson, brilliant individual, brilliant. Going to be a total asset to any group he was with. But again, how many boards could he sit on? And he knew no one recruited him saying, Dr. Bronson, you were really so brilliant. You understand business. You understand our community. They didn't put out his qualifications first. What you do, and this is a mistake that we make because not only do we not know who to recruit, we don't know how to recruit properly and appropriately. And while our intentions might be good, we wind up offending people. So instead of going to Dr. Bronson and saying, listen, would you be on our board? How about asking Dr. Bronson in your community, would you have somebody on your executive cabinet, one of your vice presidents of the university? How about one of your key faculty members? Would we support them being on our board, and would you make a recommendation? See what I'm saying? So you just go a little deeper, work a little harder, okay? And it gets just back into recruit board members with purpose and process, apply the same game plan. But the reason it's not happening is we don't know how, because if I'm on the board and it's time to recruit a board member, in all likelihood, I'm going to recruit somebody who looks like me. Why is that? Because that's my circle of friends. It's just the way it is. Okay. So that's how to improve. Okay.
I loved, Hardy, that you talked about recruiting. And again, we shared at the very beginning of this, we were both in JCs, Hardy in Alabama and I in South Carolina. And Hardy, I was asked on a Saturday, I was still a young buck in the JCs, and they said, you need to go out with this guy. He is a super recruiter. He knows what he's doing. And so I followed him around on a Saturday, and I remember him going out and he was talking to some folks, and he said, we're not like the Rotary. You don't have to come to all the meetings, okay? There's no attendance policy.
No singing songs.
And we run a lot of projects, but you don't really have to come to all those projects, just do what you want to. And we've got some fantastic professional development, but if that's not your thing, you don't have to come to that. And then those members live up to his expectations. They don't come to the meetings, they don't come to the projects. And so when you're building your board, if you say you don't have to be at the board meetings, you don't have to help us raise money, you don't have to come to the after hours and all the other events, they'll live up to your expectations.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Hardy, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you all. Thank you.
For everybody on Zoom, it's going to conclude the program. Hardy's going to be here for a few more minutes, though. Thank you, everybody.
You want our papers?